Hi, I'm Chirag Shah. Welcome to the Gateway Realty Show. And I'm here with Kathy Massarelli, a sales manager at Judicial Title. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
And
you having
so
me.
let's just jump into it. So when you're buying a house, selling a house, refinancing, there's always this thing that says title,
Yes.
title insurance. And it's something that people think costs a ton of money.
Yes.
As a broker for 10 years, no one ever knows what it is. And I'm hoping that you could shed some light on this and we could kind of simplify it for everyone.
Yes. I'm definitely going to try to.
I know you very well. You'll be able
Yeah.
to. So tell us, so let's go very broad and basic. What exactly is title insurance?
Title insurance is insurance on the actual real estate transfer of the property. So on the sale of the property, you would insure the new buyer on the transaction for anything that could come up or surface on their purchase, on their property, something that could attach to the property from anyone else who's been in the prior history of that title.
Okay, so from what I understand, you're saying, let's simplify this. Okay. You're selling a house, I'm buying a house.
Yes.
You're ensuring that once the property is transferred to me, if someone like a contractor or some other form of a lien
Yes.
is attached to the property, the insurance protects me against that?
Yes, it does. It protects any buyer from anything that this actual seller had done or any prior seller in the history of the property.
The whole history?
Yes. So if there were a lien that should surface, let's say I didn't pay something and a judgment attached to my property, when you're buying it, you would inherit that judgment. And the creditor would actually have the ability to come after you, the property owner, to collect that debt.
So if you did something you weren't supposed to do, and I decided to buy a property in cash and said, you know what, I don't care about title insurance.
Right.
I just want to buy the property. I'm an overzealous buyer. The market's really competitive. I could deal with whatever it is.
Right.
Now fast forward 7 years from now, I want to sell my property.
Yeah.
And you didn't pay, ABC contractor, and they attached a mechanics lien to your house, and you walked away when you sold the house. So if I didn't have title insurance,
that would
I
be your
would be
obligation to
responsible.
pay. Yes.
So I'd have to track the person down. I'd have to do everything associated with it. Because, if I'm correct, if you're financing, you need to have a clear title?
Yes. Anytime you finance in New York State, a mortgage will be recorded against the property. That lender, whether it's a private lender, sometimes the private lenders are a little more lenient, but if it is an institutional lender, they're definitely going to want you to get title insurance for yourself, of course, but it is an option for you. It's not mandatory in New York State for the buyer, but for the lender, they will require that you purchase a policy for them as well so that their lien can be protected. New York State is considered a race state, and it's considered that because anyone who gets to the county clerk's office first and puts their lien or their obligation on a property first, once it gets on record, they will be the first entity or person to be paid if something goes wrong. So the first person to come to the county and record a lien on your property is the first person that will get their debt paid if, let's say, there was a foreclosure on the property or some sort of non-payment or some sort of foreclosing lien, mortgage, judgment, mechanics lien, could be anything.
So that's interesting. So if I do have the insurance, it's kind of like the same thing with car insurance. If someone files a claim, I could file the claim with my insurance company now.
Yes.
If I use your company, Judicial Title,
Yes.
I bought your house that you passed this erroneous lien on to me with.
Yes.
I would contact your company, and someone on your company, do I just kind of pass off the baton and you deal with everything? Or how involved am I if there is a claim?
We do. Well, what would happen depending on this, there's all different types of claims that can come through. It's not just a lien that can attach to the property. It could be a number of different things. It could be fraudulent conveyances in the history of the title.
When you say conveyance, let's...
Transfer.
So if someone fraudulently sold the house that didn't have the authority, that happens?
It happens. I mean, it's not as common as some of the other more common things like tax non-payments. If there's a real estate tax on a property and someone just didn't pay it, that might surface. Water bills that are public, that could surface if the owner did not pay that debt. These are all types of liens that actually could follow through to the new buyer if they're not addressed at the time of closing by the title insurance company.
So the title insurance covers anything associated. So just for simple layman's terms, I would say I'm buying a title insurance policy, so it protects me, the buyer, against any liens, judgments, or any other things that are associated with the property that could be a cost prior to transfer, or I could inherit when I'm trying to transfer it.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. So if you've ever bought a house or you're going to go buy a house and you look at a title bill, there are three primary people in the title policy.
Yeah.
There's the buyers, the sellers, and the lenders.
Correct.
So we've explained.
Most times. The lender could be optional. There could be an all-cash buyer. Most times there are three parties, though.
Okay, so we'll do it. Most people finance houses, right?
Yes.
So in the sake of financing, so the buyer pays a premium for the stuff that we just discussed, right?
Yes.
So what is the lender's title insurance?
So there's multiple things going on at the closing table. There is a purchase of an owner's policy or a buyer's policy. That protects the individual owners for anything that could have happened or come up on the prior titles, any prior sales, any prior liens, debts, mortgages. I mentioned a possible erroneous transfer. There could be property disputes that could also be addressed. So anything of that nature should be found a little more easily in a title report and addressed prior to the actual closing or at the closing table. That would be handled by one insurance policy. It's called a fee policy or an owner's policy, and there's a premium associated with that. In addition to that, for anyone who is getting a loan, they will get an ALTA policy, a loan policy, to protect the lender. Any lender who is loaning money to a buyer is going to want that interest protected. So they too want title insurance. They want to make sure that their lien is first on their property. The first lien on the property maintains the lien priority, and no one else can jump in front of them if by chance there is a foreclosure down the road. So they want to make sure that their lien is going to be paid first, the first debt that's paid.
Is there a seller's line item on this as well?
Well, the sellers, they don't have an insurance policy. They are actually coming to the end of their policy. When you buy title insurance, it's in effect for the lifetime that you own the property. So the seller's policy is coming to an end when they're transferring. They do have an obligation to pay, most times, transfer tax on, there's New York State transfer tax that's going to apply, which is based on the purchase price of the property. It's a certain tax rate. And oftentimes the city has one as well, depending on where your property is located.
So that's interesting. So but shows up on the title bill, but it's not really a title
So you mentioned the title bill. The title bill can be very scary to a lot of, especially first-time home buyers. Even, people who buy multiple properties at times are a little bit surprised by how large the costs are. But the title bill is kind of the bill that brings everything together. It is not just covering the cost of an insurance policy. You have your insurance policy in the invoice. You'll have taxes that may need to be paid at the time of closing. Real estate taxes could be, if you're taking out a loan, a mortgage tax in New York State applies. So anytime you borrow money, you must pay a tax to the state of New York.
I know that's a decent size amount as well.
Yeah, it's a decent size amount, and it also depends on where you're located, because where the property is located, because there's a rate that's in effect for that area. And it's just usually, let's say in Westchester County, not Yonkers. Yonkers has a little bit higher of a rate, but in Westchester County, the total mortgage tax is 1.3%. The borrower is obligated to pay 1.05%. That's of the loan amount.
So for a $500,000 loan, they're paying a little more than $5,000.
Yes, yes. The bank also pays a portion as well. It's called a quarter point, but that's not the buyer's expense. The buyer has to pay that 1.05%. But that also comes onto the title insurance bill. So then there are costs to actually take your documents to record to the county. I was mentioning earlier that we're a race state. Everybody wants to go to the county and record their documents. Everybody wants their documents to be seen if, let's say, this buyer decides to actually sell a property in a month or two. They want to make sure that their mortgage, the lender wants to make sure their mortgage is on the property. The buyer wants to make sure that it reflects that they are the rightful owner. Because let's say you sold me a property and I never took that deed to the county to record, or my title insurance company never took that deed to the county to record. In the public record, it would look as if you still own that property. And there is a possibility. Great for you, bad for me.
Yeah.
So it protects you for a lot of different things, but all the costs kind of land on that title bill, and it can seem rather high, but it's only because we're kind of the intermediary that's collecting all these things to disperse to other entities.
So pretty much, it's a summary, right?
Yes.
Your bill summarizes the buyer's title policy, the lender's title policy,
Yes.
the transfer tax that the sellers have to pay, the fees associated with recording, various searches, any taxes that have to be picked up, whether they're for the bank, they're required by the bank. It's kind of like you're the bill collector for everybody in simple terms.
Yeah.
So and that brings me to the next thing. It's like, all right, so you pay all these fees. We know what we're covered for. A title policy is a lot of pages.
Yeah.
So when you're going through it at the closing, you get it. It's like, I know from just a broker end that they do, like, you know, municipal searches. And can you go through it a little bit in detail and a brief overview of like the main searches and what they're looking for and what happens if they find stuff?
What happens in this process is when you do sign a contract as a buyer, you meet with an attorney, and the attorneys are usually the parties who handle ordering of the title. Oftentimes, a real estate agent or an individual may know and want to work with a particular title company, but most times the attorney themselves does the ordering. They do that after they've signed the contracts, and sometimes they'll wait until there's another part of this done, which would be the borrower actually getting a loan commitment from a lender. At that point, it's usually safe to order a title insurance policy, it starts off as a title search. So the attorney will place an order with a title insurance company. They'll contact the county clerk, okay, check the public records. It's really just the combination or the putting together of a search of all public records. We're going to check the county clerk's office. We're going to check your tax department. And we're also going to check the municipality in which the property is. So let's say the property is located in New Rochelle. That property will be checked out in Westchester County, the clerk's office, Division of Land Records, and in addition to that, they'll take it to the municipality, New Rochelle, go to City Hall.
To check the building records, files, and everything.
Yeah, municipals to check to see if there's any violations on record. We're checking the fire department to see if there's any possible violations in the fire department. Most importantly, in my opinion, is the building department. We're checking to make sure that there are appropriate certificates of occupancy on file, any open permits for work that may or may not have been completed. We go there to make sure what the city shows on record as being done to the property. So there's that aspect of it. It's called municipals or departmental searches. Another aspect is going to the county and revealing all the liens, the judgments. If someone's in foreclosure and it's gotten to a certain point, we will reveal that. If there's any mechanics liens, any judgments, mortgages, any other transfers, prior transfers. Sometimes people think a husband and a wife are entitled, but oftentimes they've done a conveyance prior to and maybe just the wife or just the husband's entitled. So who can actually sell that property is indicated very clearly in a title report as well. And the title report is, the title insurance company is who really certifies who can sell that property. So those are two aspects. There's probably two others. One is a tax search, which reveals all the real estate taxes that are due on that property, whether or not they've been paid, whether or not they're in arrears.
What they actually are.
Yes, the exact amount of the current taxes, yes.
The exact amount. So I find a lot of times in real estate, there's a lot of different areas people pull taxes from. What I found out in my decade-plus experiences, most people are not going to the villages or the towns to pull the information. And in your experience, have you found that to be a surprise in a lot of cases where the taxes are advertised one way and they show up a different way?
Absolutely.
Senior Star is a big thing.
Sure, yes. That's a form of an exemption, which is a discount on the real estate tax. And there are multiple different types of exemptions that can be given.
So do you show the taxes on title? Do they show so yours is the pure form of taxes. Let's say if the property has $14,000 taxes before any kind of star or whatever it is, when they run title, they show what the actual tax amount is.
We show you the due amount. So after whatever needs to be paid, so whatever discounts apply, whatever's left that is actually being billed, we show you that. But we also show you what the original amount is without the exemptions. Because we want you to know, sometimes there could be a veteran's exemption on the property. There could be the star exemption, which most times carries over. There could be an exemption for something else, an aged exemption, which is similar to a senior citizen's exemption. So any of those things may or may not apply to the new buyer. That's why we tell you what the original tax rate is without those exemptions, so that you know if that exemption lapses, you'll know what to expect tax-wise. Granted,
worst case scenario.
Yeah, most times taxes go up every year, but you know, you get a general idea. But there's also another part of a title report, which I think is very, very important, is the survey, which a survey is an overhead view of a property and can give you a ton of information about where items are on your actual lot, where your house is in relation to your property lines, whether or not there are fences or other items from neighbors that could possibly run onto your land.
So that's where you really know. People could have fences anywhere. They could have trees planted places.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like I would walk a property with a client, and what we appear to be the property line
is
really
oftentimes not at all what the property lines are. And that's actually a common thing that buyers and many others for that matter, buyers, attorneys, real estate agents, anyone who's actually working with the property may or may not know the definitive property line. There could be a fence that runs along a property line that a seller may not even know if it was their original fence when they bought. And it could be set beyond the property line and taking over someone else's, a neighbor's piece of property, or the exact opposite, which is worse for that seller.
You know what's really good that she brought that up? Couple points that I just want to illustrate to all the people watching. First thing is back to the tax point you had is, don't let the title insurance policy be the first time you really know what the taxes are.
Yeah.
Make sure prior to going to contract or even prior to making an offer that you verify, whether it's you or your broker, make sure one of you guys verifies locally what the taxes are without any of the exemptions. The second thing is with the survey. I've had clients that have bought properties. They think a fence is one place. They find out something after, because one of the things that a lot of people do, right, to save money is there's like, oh, there's an old survey.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it. Well, one of the things when they do a survey, right, don't they stake out the property and put where all the lines are?
You can get that. That's an additional option.
Wouldn't you recommend that, though, for most people?
Sure, I would love that. It can get costly, though, so I sometimes it's difficult
When you say costly, how costly could it be?
I would say on average $100, possibly $200 each stake.
Okay.
So depending on how large the property is, to hit every single line, and oftentimes you need more than one from the start to the end, so it could add up.
But if you feel that, if I'm buying a property and I have any kind of hesitation to where the property line or whatever it is, you'd say in the end it'd be a worthwhile investment.
Absolutely, yeah. If you can afford it, yeah.
And the other thing that brings us to is just, look, if I'm buying a house, right, and you and I are going to be neighbors, if there's a property dispute in terms of the line, it's better off that the person living there deals with it prior to closing. Then all of a sudden you move into the new house and you're almost like at war with your neighbor, right?
It can go terribly wrong, to be honest with you. I've seen a lot of scenarios, and this is not just when you have a survey or not have a survey. Oftentimes, if there is a fence along a property line, likely, or not likely, but oftentimes it will be on the actual center line of the property or close to it, and anything really less than a foot, although you don't want to lose any property, anything within a foot or less than a foot is actually not really something that would be disputed over commonly. But I've seen properties where there are 2 and 3 feet along, let's say you're looking at a house and there is a fence to the right. That fence along that property line can be 2 feet before your actual property line.
So you're losing 2 feet of yard.
You're losing a 2-foot strip from the front to the back of your property. It's a lot of property to lose. I've actually had clients, I've gone out to myself to see the property and photograph it, take some information just to get, an idea as to where that property line is, and obviously comparing it to what is on a survey print, where we've had to actually move the fence. And it's been a very difficult thing to do.
So as a
And
buyer,
neighbors, yeah,
go back to the example, I'm buying your house. I've realized that the property is not right, and I want the land that I'm paying for. I'm paying taxes on that land. I'm going to live
Yes.
there. I have 2 small children, so I want to use as much of the yard. So it's better off in these scenarios that I tell you, the seller, the neighbor has a fence impeding on the property.
yes.
I would communicate with my lawyer, right? Who would communicate subsequently with your attorney that would tell you, you either have to speak with your neighbor, have them move the fence, or you're going to have to go to court. And it's better off.
And that's, I was going to say, you know, ideally, it would be great if it could be resolved prior to closing. That would be wonderful if the neighbors could work it out. But oftentimes, it doesn't work out that way. And that's
And what happens in those scenarios?
it's litigated most times. Yeah, it can be very costly. The person who's losing the property, the owner, the actual landowner, could lose the property. They doesn't necessarily mean because it's their property to begin with that they will get it back if they litigate. That doesn't always happen. You know, there's a thing called adverse possession, which can allow that neighbor to actually stake a claim to that strip of land and prove that they have been maintaining it and using it. There's some conditions, but
I think it's like 10 years or more, right?
Yeah, 10
Without
years,
any
right.
kind of visible notice or sign that it's your property.
Yeah, and there's more things that they have to comply with as well. But it's something that is a real thing, and that's why you would want to know that, and you would want to have a survey that can tell you that. So at least you're alerted to, you know, where your property lines are and what's interfering with it.
All right, that's good. So we now know that the title policy is a summary, right,
Yes.
of all the charges that banks require that are closing costs and everything else. And the actual title insurance is you're paying a premium. Is this a one-time charge?
It is. It's taken at the closing, at the time of closing. They'll take a mandated premium, which is calculated according to the state regulations.
So it's state regulated.
It is, and it whatever a certain amount of purchase price is warrants a certain amount of premium. As that purchase price changes, the premium would change as well. There is a second part to that if there is a loan policy being purchased, but it is a one-time fee. It's good for however long you own the property. It actually carries over to your heirs if there is an estate issue. So it's good for that as well, as long as there's not a consideration transfer, a purchase, any money actually exchanging hands for a transfer, that policy is in effect.
Now,
So I mean, this is something.
It's a lot. It's what
Yeah,
happens
it
if
could
I
be 10 years, 20 years,
Now,
30.
say I buy the house and I'm in one of those FHA loans that has high PMI costs, and I want to refinance now to a conventional mortgage. Do I have to get title insurance all over again?
Yes.
Okay.
The bank likely will require it, but not for yourself. Your policy is always good. The only time that the buyer ever needs to get a new policy is if there's a new buyer coming along. That's and they're purchasing for
So
value.
you just have to buy lenders.
The
you have to
lender
do
will
the
require,
lender.
yes, the new lender will say, okay, you know, I need a policy now. What's happened since you purchased? You could have gotten liens on the property. They want an updated search.
Is the buyer, what's more expensive, the buyer policy or the lender's policy?
The buyer policy is more expensive, and actually you get a discount for the lender's policy. If you purchase them simultaneously, there is a discount. So as I said earlier, title insurance for a buyer is not required in New York State. It would not be a smart move to purchase a property
But a bank
without
can
that.
require it.
Yeah, well, the bank will likely require it for
The
themselves.
lender.
Yes, so it will insure the lender. But for the buyer, you can choose not to buy title insurance.
I never knew that.
Yeah, you can choose not to. But I will say this.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a very bad idea. And I've been doing this since 1992, and I've seen only one person not take title insurance, and they were entitled for a very short time and, you know, could afford the loss if something were to go
If
wrong.
something happened.
Yeah.
So as a buyer, I technically do have a choice of who I work with. You know, if someone's
Sure.
watching the show and they felt comfortable because you have a lot of experience, they could contact you and they could tell their attorney
Sure.
or broker
Absolutely.
or however that they could work with you.
Absolutely. The party that actually is the entity that by law can choose what title company to work with is the actual buyer. Most times they're not the ones placing the order because they speak with their attorney, and the attorney has commonly done that in the past. But if a buyer would like to work with a particular title insurance company, all they need to do is tell their attorney, and their attorney.
And the attorney shouldn't obstruct this or fight with them or
no, not
anything
at all.
like
They shouldn't.
that.
Yeah, they should not.
We can all play nice in the sandbox.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, good. So, look, I hope this has cleared stuff up for everybody in terms of what's title, how it works. Is there anything else you think is helpful, you know, without getting into any, like, very complicated details or things that people should avoid, or anything else besides the basics that you feel people should know?
Well, especially if it's a first-time home buyer, but like I said, even for the people who are purchasing multiple properties, I would just recommend that you work with someone reputable, obviously, someone with experience. There are a lot of things in the title insurance world that can trigger something else in your transaction. So if something isn't done, for instance, a survey, or if something isn't found, let's say there's a particular piece of the structure that hasn't been accounted for in the municipality, something like that can further obstruct your loan. It can interfere with the possibility of an appraisal coming in. So, not again to overcomplicate it, but what I would say is, if at all possible, I would make sure you're working with someone who is checking the municipality, checking for certificates of occupancies, and definitely obtain a survey. I never recommend anyone closing on a property without a survey. That's for when you purchase. And
you're saying it's a smart idea to do your own survey, not just use the old one they have on file, which could be from 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's very helpful to sometimes look back at an old one, but if you want to know exact measurements, if you want to know exactly where things are, anything that's newly added to a property, you'll want a new survey.
Okay, great. Kat, for everyone, Kathy's information is going to be on the screen, and she's been kind enough to provide her cell phone number. So if you have questions or are looking for a great title company to work with, I know Judicial's been around for a long time. They're very reputable. They cover a large area. So I just want to thank everyone for watching the Gateway Realty Show. Information you should not be without. This episode will be posted on our website, and her and I are going to come up with some best practices, questions, and stuff that we'll post at the end of the episode as well, that you could find on my website. And you can find us on Facebook as well. And we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming, Kathy.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.